Today's workshop is all about finding and understanding the sources involved in a news story. We are going to learn about how news is produced and how to determine if it is reliable. To begin, think of a recent issue or event in the news and brainstorm a list of who was or could have been involved in creating and sharing news about that issue or event in today's media landscape. Now, look at the Who Touches the News worksheet. Each box contains information about a different person who is connected to a news story about creating a new medicine from a plant. Read each description and decide who was involved with the story first, second, third, and last. Which of these people do you think is the source for the news story? Sometimes there is confusion over what we mean when we say the source of a news story. While the word source can be used loosely in many ways, when it comes to the news, the source is the person or thing that provides key information. We're going to watch a short video about getting to the source, which will explain all the layers a news story goes through before it gets to you.
Where do you hear that? It's often the first question we ask when we hear something interesting or unexpected. We want to know the source. With news, when we talk about the source, we mean who or what provided the facts. So that could be people who know things, like the neighbor who saw the fire break out, or that could be documents with key information, like a bank statement or an accused embezzler. Knowing the source of information adds meaning and value because it tells you whether that information is solid and whether it might be tinged with any sort of perspective or bias. But because of the ways we assemble and share and access news today, identifying the original source can take a bit of digging. To know the source, you have to look past the outer layers of how information appears and get to the core. What are these outer layers I'm talking about? Let's take a look. Often, the first layer we encounter when we come across a news story is the preview version created by search engines or social media or news apps, the comments and captions on Snapchat, or the snippets on a Google results page. The way these tools and the people who use them wind up sorting news stories can affect their impact. For example, if your social media friend passes on a news article they've captioned with 10 loudly crying emojis, you might read that content differently than if you'd come across it on your own without the big reaction. So search tools, social media, and apps bring us headlines and comments on the news, which can shape how we see it. They play an important role, and we keep seeking new and better tools to develop news. But a Facebook post or a text is not the original source of that information. So let's keep digging. The next layer on our journey to the core: publishers. These are the people and groups who select and share news stories. So we could be talking about a local blogger, a city paper, a national TV news show, anyone who curates content for an audience. Just as we saw with social media, the way publishers edit a story or how they place it on their website might affect the impact of the story. If it's the first thing you see on their website, you're going to assume it's important. If they edit out a paragraph or two, it can shift the whole tone of the story. So again, it's an important role, and we should be aware of it. But the magazine or website or YouTube channel that publishes a news story is not the original source. Keep digging. The next layer you'll get to is journalists, and it's the last layer separating us from the source. These are the people who hunt down sources and then assemble the facts they find to create stories. Obviously, they play a vital role. There'd be no news story without the journalists to put it together, and it's their name you'll see at the top of the news report. But the author or videographer or podcaster is not the original source. Once you get within a news story itself, past the sharing tools and the publishers and the journalists, that's where we find the original sources of information. If the source is a who, it could be an expert or official. It could be an average person who witnessed or participated in an event, or it could be someone with a connection to the place it happened. If the source is a what, it could be an official record, like a census report, or it could be a letter or a transcript or a published statement. It could be something visual, like a photograph or a video recording. Let's say you've gotten past the outer layers and identified your source. Awesome! But one more thing, how do you know if it's a reliable source? Well, here are a few key questions you can ask. First, is the source named? A reliable source will usually stand behind the information they're providing. If not, there should be a good reason, like protecting their job or keeping them out of danger. Second, is the source legitimate? If the source is a what, like a document, are you sure it's not a forgery? If the source is a who, does the person have the qualifications to know what they're talking about? Third, what are the source's limitations? In other words, how much and what kind of information does it really provide? Does the document in question fully support the story's claims? What biases or connections might be shaping the individual source's perspective on the story? And finally, if the source is a who, what are their motivations? If it's a company insider, why are they willing to speak out or leak a document? Are they looking for attention, fame, revenge? Do they want to put an end to wrongdoing? Or maybe just better inform the public? A quality source is at the heart of every good news story. If you can get past the layers of shaping and sharing, find the source, and ask some key questions, you can confirm that your source has the solid core it needs.
Look at the Getting to the Source tip sheet and examine the layers on the bottom. The source is where the information originates. In the case of the news story on the Who Touches the News worksheet, the information is created in the research lab. Which of the 4 people were involved in the research? Janessa Johnson. Therefore, she is the source of the information. The second layer you see is journalists. Their role is to turn facts into stories. Which of the people wrote the story about the research? Lyle Kennedy. The third layer is publishers. Their role is to select and share stories. Which of the people published Kennedy's story? Charlotte O'Day via her website, Science Now. The fourth layer is search, social, and apps, whose role is to sort and reshare stories. As we know, the person who shares the story via social media is Brian Kim, so he was the last of these people to touch the news story. On the bottom of this page, think of 2 other ways you may find a story like this. Some methods of sharing are driven automatically by technology, like news apps, alerts, and feeds, while others depend on an individual using a tool to share something, like a person posting on Twitter or a message via WhatsApp. Though these examples may be where the news came from before it reached you, they aren't the original source. Now it's time to apply your source digging skills to real-life examples. For this activity, you're going to read the article, identify 2 sources referred to in the article, and evaluate them using the provided chart. Let's start one together. Everyone look at the article called Viewfinders Unveil Fall Colors for the Colorblind and follow along. The Great Smoky Mountains always looked dull, black, and tawny to Lauren Van Loo from the 3,590-foot-high perch of Mount Harrison. That was true even when the rugged expanses were bursting with their famous fall colors. For the 20-year-old Van Loo, who has been colorblind her whole life, some colors have just been left to the imagination. She loves painting, but her wife Molly has to help her pick and mix colors. Last week, however, Van Loo visited the scenic mountaintop again. She looked through a special viewfinder. For the first time, she saw yellows, oranges, and reds. They were exploding across the landscape. Red was the biggest difference. I mean, I can't describe it, said Van Loo. She lives in Seaverville, Tennessee. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. That red, it's just gorgeous. It's incredible. She wondered, how do you see like that all of the time? Who is the first source that this article refers to? Right, it's Lauren Van Loo. She's a 20-year-old colorblind person from Tennessee. What information does she provide? She describes her experience using the viewfinder and seeing the colors, especially red, on the mountain. Do you think she is a legitimate source? Explain. She is a first-hand witness. She is colorblind and she uses the viewfinder, so her information is legitimate. What are the limitations of this source for providing information? She can only provide personal experience. She is not an expert on colorblindness or the lenses. What are her motivations for providing this information? She wants to share her experience to help others understand what the viewfinders can do. Continue reading this article and choose one additional source you find. Complete the chart for source 2. Then, repeat this process with the second article. Thank you for participating in today's workshop. I hope you will be more in tune with the sources of the information you continue to encounter.